That's right, you get 12 free movie rentals from Blockbuster with any VCR or camcorder from Smith's. Blockbuster Video has the Northwest's best selection of movies, from classics to the latest releases. And there's a Blockbuster Video near you.
Hey everyone, this is Mike from You'll Probably Agree. Today I speak with Pat McDonald from Hollywood, Chicago, and as usual, Ian Simmons from Kickseat.com. We take a little trip towards memory lane, where we talk about the evolution of watching movies from home, dating all the way back from Betamax all the way to streaming today. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Hey everybody, and welcome to You'll Probably Agree. I'm here with Pat McDonald from Hollywood, Chicago, and as always, Ian Simmons from Kickseat.com. I screwed it up, whatever, leaving it in.
No, both are true.
Yeah, oh, good. I just use my mass incompetency and leave it online. But I guess as we're all at home watching movies, the thought occurred to me. You know, one thing I have in my childhood home and in my apartment that I don't see much of anymore are my DVD collection, my Blu-ray collection, and it just made me start to think about, how the evolution of watching movies from home started, all the way from when we were using Betamax tapes, to us streaming everything from Netflix and just going through the whole history of it. It's kind of fascinating how that happened.
And that's why you have me on, because I can go back even farther.
Oh, yes, yeah. So, I guess having said that, I mean, my brief history of what I understood from it, from my Google searches and some of the stuff I read up on and some of the stuff I already knew earlier, I mean, we've really kind of come a long way. I mean, in 1971, there was the Umatic tapes, which are kind of like when I worked in cable access, like starting like when I was 13, we would have these big tape decks, and basically it was kind of like how you would edit films. You would have this one deck where you'd have the tape rolling, and the other deck where you would put in your time codes and then trim where the edit would be, and it was all analog. And my very first movie that I ever made, I actually found when digging through some old videotapes, which I'll get into in a bit regarding those. And I have to say, the first movie I made was a masterpiece. No, just kidding. It was a piece of shit.
The thing is, and I can remember back when Johnny Carson was on the air, he would have a segment every year on Christmas where he would show like cutting edge gadgets. And one of the most amazing ones that I remember very distinctly was the fact that the first video cameras, where you could, like you said, the large units, and they weren't standardized at all, but you could actually buy your own little camera and video unit to take your own video, which just seemed like the Jetsons back to a young lad in Michigan City back in the 70s. So
was that when they had it on VHS, or was that when you had to like plug it into the TV and roll the thing? Because I know VHS was really when the home video market took off, and the first camera I used was at my local station, and it was the kind you had to throw over your shoulder and you pop in the whole VHS tape, and you could record over anything, because VHS really opened up the floodgates to the piracy market in a way.
You know why VHS became the standard, don't you? You were talking about it earlier, pornography.
Oh, yeah.
The porn industry adopted it because it was cheaper, and they were selling millions of tapes all of a sudden, and Beta didn't have a chance after that.
That reminds me that scene in Boogie Nights when Burt Reynolds is talking to a producer, and they're saying, well, we're going to have videotape because this is the new way it's going. He's like, but I don't want videotape. It looks like shit. I want to use film.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we had the Betamax tapes. I think those were introduced in
They were
1975.
superior to VHS. They were superior to VHS, but they didn't, as I mentioned, the reason it didn't work is because the porn industry flooding millions of tapes onto the marketplace.
Oh, so I thought also they contain as much because that was one thing I was trying to figure out is could they contain as much footage as a VHS, like the length, or was it limited to 60 minutes per tape?
Yeah, it was 60 minutes, but I think there were different speeds like VHS. You could
Uh,
put 6 hours on a VHS if you didn't mind the quality.
yeah, exactly. And I mean VHS, the quality, it was kind of low grade, but it didn't matter because once VHS hit the market, it was bought. It hit the market in '76, a year after Betamax, and I think that was between Philips and Sony and Panasonic, if I'm correct. Someone will probably correct me, but whatever. And then I think it wasn't until magnetic video came along and started duplicating movies for just in time for Star Wars for Betamax and VHS to be purchased by consumers to actually be used. And then of course you had 19. I love 9, and that's when the whole thing kind of exploded. Well, I think in 1980 it really exploded with VHS, and everyone hopped on board with that. And then in 1978 was Laserdisc, which I think if you saw my questionnaire that I sent you guys, I asked if anyone could repair my Laserdisc because my my brother-in-law bought one a while back, and they are very sensitive. Like if you just like I don't know how these UPS guys packaged it today. I mean, maybe they were like taking turns gang beating it, but like yeah, every time he would get one, it would be a little damaged. There'd be a little error code, and I think there's
Well,
a belt inside the mechanism doesn't make it work, but its quality.
if you're going to find somebody to repair it, it would be in the city.
Yes, we did find someone in the in he lives in Highland Park, Illinois, and
Okay.
in the suburbs there, they found like this place that repairs cell phones, but they actually repair Betamax. So when the stores open up again, we can get that repaired. But the quality on those were amazing. The problem was is that they they were so damned expensive that ultimately a bunch of schools bought them, which is for educational purposes, which is unfortunate because the not only was the quality for an analog source pretty good, especially the audio, uh, but they they had the most amazing artwork that you could find in these things. Just the booklets on them are absolutely gorgeous. I have the this I think what got me into Laserdisc was I wanted my unaltered Star Wars before George Lucas came in and did his stupid bullshit with them. And uh,
Is that true? I mean, that's why you wanted a laser disc?
yep,
I was reading about that the other day. They were saying that it's very hard to find the original release to theaters. You would actually have to get a hold of a theatrical reel of film from those days, apparently.
Wow.
wow, yes, there is. Yes, it is unaltered on there that I have,
Okay.
and I think it's 9 discs. Because once you finish one disc, you gotta take another one and put it in, and I think like each disc was maybe about an hour, and oh god, no wait, I think it was 30 minutes per each side. I'm gonna sneeze now because I have the Rona. Um,
Please.
and anyways,
There you go. There
uh,
you go, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah,
Another another weird story about Star Wars is I swear, and again, I'm sure that Lucas has excised all of it, but when they were first showing previews for it, they showed it as a comedy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, it was a takeoff on Buck Rogers, so I think they were kind of emphasizing that element of it. But
Yeah.
through all my research on it and all the internet, there seems to be no mention of that trailer. So maybe I'm just hallucinating as usual.
I'm not sure. I remember the very first trailer, and you could find it on YouTube for Star Wars, was just like it was weird. It was just bad. Like it had this ominous music with this the very sort of lucrative trailer voice guy saying, "Soon the galaxy, Star Wars will be coming into your galaxy." It looked like a damn horror movie. What the hell, And there's this great interview. It was like on VH1 with Mark Hamill, and he was talking about how when they were showing that preview and they were showing the Star Wars trailer, and the guy says, "Coming soon to a galaxy near you." The guy said, "Yeah, it's also going to be coming soon to strip mall fucking theater." He just yells at the back.
I think the karma for George Lucas will always be the holiday special, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because he can't destroy it. It's done.
And then he used elements from it in his sequels. He's like, "Oh, it doesn't." And then in Revenge of the Sith, he has the Wookiee planet in there. I can't remember the name of it now. Kashyyyk. Yes, he has Kashyyyk.
Oh my God, we're nerding out now, babies.
And of course,
we went from the history of television to the history of Star Wars geekdom.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm sure once the Mandalorian comes out, there'll be much more to talk about there. I still haven't gotten through Clone Wars.
Do they still have Life Day?
That's
part of it, isn't it? It's part of the legacy.
Where Carrie Fisher is singing Life Day, and then they cut to Harrison Ford, and it was the exact moment in time when you could tell he died inside and just phoned it in Hollywood.
He doesn't like people bringing it up. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. But yes, you can find Star Wars Unaltered Trilogy on Laserdisc. You can find it also through this guy named Harmy, Harmy, and it's called the Despecialized Edition. And you can download it, and basically he took multiple sources of the Unaltered Trilogy, one of which is the George Lucas original unaltered cuts, also known as the Gout DVD. And it was these DVDs that had an extra disc with the special edition and then the regular edition. On that extra disc, there's the unaltered version, but it was just a terrible Laserdisc transfer that they just slapped onto that disc. And he would go through all these sources, go through After Effects and various other programs, and restore everything to the way they were in a 1980 by 720p file with 5.1 surround.
Now we're really geeking out.
Yeah.
I thought Ian knowing the planet of the Wookiees was geeky, but that you over geeked him, sir. Congrats.
Well, that's the thing is I know my fantasy planets, but as far as the technical jargon of the I was watching a piece that Mike had sent on YouTube on the history of home video that was very interesting. It's like a 15-minute piece, and from what I could tell, it's very comprehensive. But they're getting into like the aspect ratios and audio and sound, and it really did feel like almost like a home theater setup instructional video. But it was stuff that I feel like I knew, but I couldn't explain it for the life of me. So that was very entertaining. Yeah, just one last bit on Star Wars. I have not seen the original version since I was, a young whippersnapper. Yeah, but I gotta say, I think preferred the versions that came out just before the special editions, I want to say in '95, they released those VHS sets where they'd gone in and they'd cleaned up a lot of the special effects, like the laser blasts and things like that. And they did a complete polish in all three of the original trilogy. And that, I think, is the best Star Wars has ever looked. So when people say they want to see the original trilogy again, I do, but I want to see that particular version. I don't necessarily care about the old.
Was that in the gold box?
I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, there you go.
No, I don't know if it was in a gold. There were a few different versions of it.
I'm looking at it right now.
Because I have the ones that I'm talking about there wasn't I don't know if there was a different version that had a gold box, but these were like, had like, I think the Jedi logo is like a pinkish purple and Empire was blue, and they had like the giant faces of like Yoda and the Stormtrooper and stuff like that. Yeah.
So this is before the special edition.
Yes. Yeah, this is like 95.
Grandparents had in their house. And yeah, they were unaltered, but I guess they cleaned some things up. There was some rotoscoping around the edges of the Rancor that they cleaned up. So,
yes, they polished the movies, but he didn't mess with them. I don't think there were any actual alterations to the storylines or like added scenes and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It is incredible. Like, because those VHSs are in demand now. And I remember going to my grandparents one day and I'm like, do you have that Star Wars VHS? And I'm like, I don't know. And I just wanted to go, where are the Star Wars tapes?
So home video.
You have been. Interestingly enough, it all started in the 1950s when you talk about home video, because that was when the first purchase of a film catalog occurred in early television. So when you think about home viewing or home video, that's how people watch movies, beginning at that time. And it took a while for the film companies to sell because they didn't want the competition, obviously. But then the gold mine opened up, so they started selling frequently.
It's incredible. I mean, once you brought in VHS, that changed everything. I mean, the 1980s completely.
We went from the 50s to the 80s, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My 60s and 70s mean nothing now.
I
understand. Go ahead.
I'm kidding.
I mean, that pretty much sums it up. That's how you watch a movie in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You had to wait for it to come on TV. And you had to watch it with commercials.
Yes, and I think with 75 with the Betamax, when it came on TV, people would wait for it to come on. They'd hit record on the Betamax.
Right.
And then they'd have to store the movie on there with the commercials and everything. And then I think even before that, did people have like their own 16 millimeter projectors that they would have at home, or was that sort of a specialty? Because I know some people would have copies of movies at their home like that.
Well, yeah, when I was graduating from college, one of our advisors had a cocktail party. And he was a big film buff. And that was the first time I seen anybody have a collection of films. And he had done a careful, he would find, the most pristine things he could get off TV. But he had it all because he just was obsessive about it. And I dare to think what he did with all that stuff after, because it was just a wall full of things, just like somebody has 5,000 albums or something. That's how big his collection was.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think Leonard Maltin has a lot of 16 mil copies and 35 mil copies.
Oh, yeah, that's another area of geekdom.
Oh man, I would love to talk to him about that kind of stuff because I love collecting that kind of crazy memorabilia, and I mean, of course, dating back to Star Wars again because that's the only movie that exists now. And
yes, apparently.
But this guy on YouTube, His name's the Angry Video Game Nerd, and he has a
You know all the great guys on the internet. Go ahead.
yeah, he has a 16 millimeter copy of Star Wars. I'm not going to call it A New Hope. Of Star Wars, yeah.
Well, that one probably is the closest to the original. If I can find that article about trying to find the original, it's very interesting, and apparently it's very, unless you get a actual reel from 1977, I guess it doesn't exist on any of the subsequent releases, even the Laserdisc. Now, I may be wrong.
Yeah, so says Lord Lucas. You know, yeah. But yeah, we don't know that for sure. But
Darth Lucas.
Darth Lucas, there you go. Rise, Darth Lucas. I don't know. That was Kathleen Kennedy. I own the trilogy now. All right, no, but you know, the biggest watershed moment, I mean, aside from the VHS, which opened up, you know, the Blockbusters, the home video stores, was what was in 1996 when DVD came along, which created. This is one thing, that video I sent you guys, I noticed was glaringly missing. They said that the Blu-ray introduced the home theater experience. Wrong. It was the DVD that created the home theater experience, because people would buy their DVDs and you would get a quality of film that never changes, was a digital copy of it, true digital. Laserdisc was still analog, and you would get surround sound 5.1. You know, like you get the speaker on the left, and then the center, and then the right, and then two in the rear, and the 0.1 was your subwoofer. And that was a mind-blowing experience, which, you know, I'll get into. And of course, after DVD, there was the birth of Netflix. 1997 they were founded, and then 2006, you know, was Blu-ray. Or 2005, iTunes Store created
2005. Hey, that's older than I thought. I have a friend who still uses the DVD service from Netflix.
I do, actually. I use streaming and DVD, because you could get certain movies on DVD that you can't find anywhere on streaming. So I like it.
That's true. They did get a collection that.
Yeah, it's like there's certain, like, one of my friends recently recommended. He's a guy from Ireland, and he recommended the sitcom to me called "Fools of Horses," and I watched it. It's a fascinating sitcom. It's very it's like a mixture of Always Sunny and Seinfeld, but it came out like in the 70s. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. And of course, I wouldn't have found that unless I had a BritBox account, or if I could get it on disc. But yes, you know, we had 2005 iTunes Store. You could, I guess, buy movies online or rent them from there. And then 2006 was Blu-ray, and then 7 was when Netflix's streaming service really took off. And the history on how Netflix's streaming service happened, when I was reading it last night, I literally yelled, "Oh my God, wow."
Did it echo in the apartment? You're sort of like a no.
It was like, how are they this stupid? Because this is one of the most monumental fuck ups in history on Blockbuster's behalf. Because let's see, Reed Hastings and Mark Rudolph were the two guys who launched Netflix in '97, whereas originally the mail-in DVD service. And fast forward a few years later, to abbreviate, I think in 2000 they were coming out with the idea for the streaming service. They went to Blockbuster and said to them, "Hey, we have We want to stream movies online. Would you like to be a part of it? Blockbuster said no. And then they approached them 3 other times, 3 years later, I think, if I'm correct, in like 2003, 2004, about Blockbusters picking up their service. And they said no again. So they gave them 4 opportunities total. And when Netflix launched their service, and then Blockbuster subsequently did a few years later, Blockbuster, Hastings said that if Blockbuster launched their service 2 years before Netflix did, then they would have taken Netflix out of business.
Sure.
And not only that, but when they made their offer to Blockbuster, it was going to be Blockbuster's name under Netflix. So it wouldn't have been Netflix streaming, it would have been Blockbuster streaming. Whoops! What a mistake that was! But, yeah. And that's my history of me rambling on about the video industry. I spent a lot of time researching this stuff.
My history with it was my first roommate in Chicago had a Beta machine, and near Wrigley Field there was a place called Gorilla Video. It was right across from Wrigley Field, and this was a warehouse place. So by far the most comprehensive video store in Chicago, and they had a pretty good Betamax section. But the writing was on the wall a few years later, and that pretty much went out the window. And of course, that store closed. The place next to me was Star Video. It was run by a couple of Korean dudes, and every time I went into the store, they were playing The Godfather. So take with that what you want. But they did have a good soft porn collection too. So it's all good for me in my lonely days back then.
Whenever I visit my dad and my mom, he'd always, if The Godfather was on, he'd watch it on. And as a joke, my brother-in-law would say, "Oh, he's spending time with the family again," with the Godfather family. Yes.
Well, I like the idea of mixing The Godfather with soft porn, so you could have the Wadfather.
That's a good one. Like a hand like holding a puppet. It's just like jerking someone off. All right.
Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
Everything works.
Anyway,
you cannot refuse. That's right.
This is officially labeled not for children.
Now, do you guys remember whether either your families or yourself buying your first, machine that will play either videotapes or DVDs? I bought my first VHS player. I was working for Sears, and they had one in stock in their warehouse for the bargain price of $250.
My God.
I bought that, and I thought I was living on the moon. Because that's when, there wasn't very many video stores open, and you pretty much watch what you watched.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Ian, who? Ian, I'll let you go first.
Oh yeah, I remember it was probably 86 or 87. We got our first VHS player. It was like one of those big couch-sized top loaders that was a lot of fun. And I remember we just got a bunch of blank VHS tapes and record stuff off TV. And then I think it might have been later that same year that we got Top Gun was the first tape that we actually bought. And then I think it was the year later, it might have been Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
Nice.
And I was just so...
Modern day?
What's that?
Is that I just cut
Save
up
the Whales.
Review to that like in December. It was funny.
Yeah, it's but the thing that knocked me out was the idea, because we had rented some movies from the video store, but then my dad put in Top Gun one day, and I saw the Diet Pepsi commercial that was before it. Like they were doing the thing where they're flying upside down and the cockpits are right next to each other and they're drinking Diet Pepsi. And for whatever reason, I just thought that was the coolest thing that we now own Top Gun, not because of the movie, but because I could watch that cool Diet Pepsi commercial whenever I wanted. Yeah, I was a dumb kid. But yeah, that was my first kind of experience with it, and then in the later years, as I got to be into my teen years, I became obsessed with saving up to buy like used movies from the video store, so we can have
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
all the commercial tapes. And because I mean at that point we were still on the tail end of like, if you want to buy a VHS tape, it was $80 for some
That was the
crappy Dolph
strangest.
Lundgren movie. Yeah.
When you think about it, it was the strangest economic model, but somehow they got away with it.
Well,
Because it was such a wild thing to own a movie, I guess.
Well, it makes sense in a way, because a video store is, they're plunking down $80 for a tape, but they're going to rent that tape out
Right.
over and over and over again at, $1.50, $3 a pop, whatever it is. So if it's a popular movie, they're going to see that back in, a week. Just constantly renting out tapes. Well, maybe not a week, because people would keep it for like a night or two. I don't know, but they'd be able to get a return on their investment. I suppose if the tapes were more commercially affordable, especially early on, people would be more inclined to buy rather than rent. And then it's like, well, what the hell do you need the video stores for? You can have more of a direct market, which, I mean, look where we are today. Now they've cut out the middleman completely, and you just click online. And now you own the movie within, charge your credit card and off you go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's also fascinating to me when I download from Netflix or Amazon, and they have the option to own the movie for what, $15?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And so you load it. Where do you load it? Where does it download into? Your queue? Now I sound like Grandpa. Where does it download into?
Yeah. Well, I always wonder what happens when it's taken from the library. Like I bought one day when I was really drunk, I bought The Lion King on Amazon, and now that Disney Plus exists, what happens when The Lion King's no longer there? I just spent
Oh
$20
wow! Just
today.
stole it from you, eh?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I've heard of well, let's go back for a second. There are other sort of streaming services like Ultraviolet was one of the earlier streaming service, very popular with the codes. Like if you bought a DVD or a Blu-ray, you'd get the code for the Ultraviolet digital copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
They went out of business, I think, last year. They got absorbed, I think, by Vudu. And then I just got an email last week saying that Vudu was now being purchased by Fandango.
Oh my God.
So it was a matter of when the Ultraviolet thing got purchased. I may be getting it mixed up, because I think there's like 3 or 4 of these services all competing for market share.
Yeah.
But I would get an email saying, you've got 3 months to transfer your library to this new service, and if you don't, then all of the stuff that you've you could purchase movies, or you just redeem the codes and stuff, but your entire library would be wiped out if you didn't do this this transfer. And it was pretty easy. It was just like log into this thing, click a button saying, I want to transfer it and all that. But I was glad I did, because otherwise, I've got like 100 movies. Granted, I never watch them, because honestly, if I have a movie because of a digital code, it means that I bought the Blu-ray, so it's sitting on my shelf.
Yeah, how did that work? I don't understand that. How'd that concept work?
It's essentially, if you buy a Blu-ray of, the new Star Wars or something. I don't think they did codes at that point, but let's just say Star Wars. I buy The Force Awakens, and there's a code inside the Blu-ray. You go to Vudu, you redeem the code, and then you have the digital version of it that goes into your Vudu library. Let's just say you're traveling and you're not at home to pull the Blu-ray off the shelf. You can just log on to your Vudu account, like, I want to watch Star Wars today, and then you can just watch it. It's in your library.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
And so you can watch it like anywhere. You can watch it, on your phone while you're in the bathroom. You can, watch it anywhere. But then you'd have to transfer all that digital information. But I mean, I just rearranged like 160 DVDs that I had that were completely misarranged, and
Now they're arranged and never to be watched again.
Oh, no, I watch them
It's
a
like
lot.
the 400 CDs I have hanging on my wall, never to be listened to again.
I watched one of them a few days ago. I watched Chappelle's show recently, so yeah, it was pretty good. Man, that was a great show. But yeah, it's funny. My introduction to the home video market, well, it was a little different because my dad ran a video store when I was a kid, and and the thing is, you would think if he ran a video store, he would know a lot about movies. He doesn't know shit about movies. But but I remember as a kid, he would have aisles and aisles filled with tapes, and he and one of his coworkers and I, as for fun, we'd run around and throw the VHSs at each other in the store. Uh,
Wow.
he was an older guy.
Memories.
Yeah, he was but he was a fun guy. My dad didn't mind. I would love to do an episode with my dad just talking about his video store because he's got some juicy stories in there. One of which, like, there was a guy at a pizza shop that he had worked
Speaking
with.
of porno plots.
Oh yeah, here we go. Yes, Oh God, now I got a horrible image in my head. But like the guy at the pizza shop owed him some money where they were doing some business at, so he went into his apartment and kicked his door down or something like that.
Wow.
But my dad would get these screener copies of these VHS tapes, and they'd have the message on there: "This is not to be sold or rented, and this is your copy, and do not." It's the same as the critic screeners, but on VHS, and they were there to promote his movies. And on the television up on the screen in the store there, I remember he'd always be playing Jaws up on there, and yeah, it was pretty interesting. And when I was digging through my parents' basements because everyone lives there now without a job. I still have my apartment.
This is much more interesting than the history of home theater. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I still have my apartment. It's a joke. But yeah, he had all these VHS copies from his store in there. He still has a lot of the toys that distributors would sell to him. He's got these old Scooby Doo toys. He has this life size dog of Beethoven dog in there. A poster. Yeah. So he had this video store before Blockbusters bought him out. And he never held it against them. To him it was just business. And fast forward a few years later, and I worked at Blockbuster in 2006 when I just got out of high school, to make some money. And that was an interesting experience because when I got in Blockbuster in 2006, they were competing hard with Netflix's online service. And it turned out my manager there was actually selling, taking people's credit card information and secretly signing them up for Blockbuster's online streaming program. So
Oh.
that
Seems to
happened.
be a lot of scandal. That's
Yeah.
you've been associated with a lot of scandal.
Yeah, I know, right? Hence how I am today. It is interesting, yeah, but it is. But yes, I remember watching movies from my dad's store. I get to rent them for free and watch them at home, and I'd have the VHS tape. But really, the most mind-blowing moment for me was my introduction to DVD, which is why I so succinctly remember it being the home theater experience, because I remember going to my uncle's house, and he had this whole setup. He had this big TV, and he had this huge surround sound system. Like the speakers were like the size of a chair, and and he put on this DVD copy of U.S. Marshals, and he's like, check out the surround sound on this, and whoa, it was loud, and I've never seen or heard a tape. I've never seen a tape look so good, and the quality never changes, and the surround sound could just shatter the windows. It felt like you were actually in the damn theater, and the DVD was around for like a decade or so before streaming came along, and to me, that was just incredible. I remember right away, I'm like, I gotta buy a DVD. I got to buy a home theater, and everyone did it. My grandfather did it. I did it. I remember I bought a DVD, and they said, "What's a good movie?" I remember people at Blockbuster would all come in there and ask them, "What's a good movie to play on the home theater?" And they said Gladiator. So I bought Gladiator.
Gladiator.
Yeah, I don't know, Gladiator. And yeah,
Liz Taylor. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I remember just that, I'd go to the opening scene when they're fighting everybody in the Coliseum, and yeah, throughout the speakers, it was like an orgasm of sound. I found out later that I properly didn't have it hooked up. It was hooked up through AV instead of optical, and optical gives you true 5.1. That's more nerd talk. But yes, it was incredible for me. And then, of course, streaming came along, and by then, I was a bit older and it wasn't as romanticized by, for me. I just remember the time I was glad that streaming took down Blockbuster because I didn't have a good experience with them. I probably quit that job.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think my first encounter with DVD, well, I got to rewind a little bit.
Ooh, rewind.
Yes,
nice.
Because it doesn't. Yes, it does involve a VHS experience. When I first saw The Usual Suspects was out on VHS, I think I was in like Coconuts or one of those places, and they had it behind the counter in a 2-tape set. I was like, 2 tapes? I didn't think the movie was that long. And they're like, no, this is not. It's the movie twice. The first is just the first VHS is just the film. The second VHS has something called an audio commentary, where there's Bryan Singer and Chris Terrio or whoever were talking over the movie, like talking of the history of it and the making of it. I'm like, no. And so that was the first time I'd ever even heard of that concept. I know they had done stuff like that on Laserdisc, but I was kind of a sheltered kid. But when DVD came out, and it was like a CD-sized disc, and then you'd have all of these extra features on it, like behind-the-scenes stuff and making-ofs and audio commentaries and trailers. I just completely lost my mind. I think my early DVDs were The Matrix and Mystery Men.
And that Matrix DVD. I remember when the PlayStation 2 came out. That game console was such a big deal because it could play DVDs. And at that time, I'm going to sneeze again. Okay, one way. At that time, DVDs, were still kind of emerging on the market. This is around like 2001 or so, or 2000. And this was a way where DVDs could be affordable for people, because you could slap down $300 to $400 for your PlayStation 2, but you could also play DVDs on it. And one of the main movies that they would advertise to work on there was The Matrix. So you could play Matrix on surround sound and your video games on there. And that to me, I remember that movie. My parents hated me for playing that because I blasted the shit out of that movie. Especially the scene where they're getting the shootout in the hallway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I also loved that they had interactive menus. I remember the DVD for Office Space. It was like you put it in, and they'd have the studio logo, of course, but then the main menu was like an office cubicle, but there'd be like funny sound effects, and I think you could touch areas of the screens, and things would pop out at you, and it was it's just this extra little creative touch. I mean, there are some menus. I loved it when you'd turn on the back and it would say, special features, interactive menu, and it just means you could press play.
Yeah.
But then there'd be discs like the Memento DVD when that came out. I remember it was cool, but also very frustrating because you actually had to solve puzzles in order to like play the movie and unlock special features.
Oh my God.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, so it was it was a good time, and you don't really see a whole lot of that now, even in the era of Blu-ray. There's sort of a lost art that kind of fizzled out with the DVD. It was very strange.
Yeah, Blu-ray menus are really slow and kind of
Oh
sloppy.
yeah.
They had like this generic sound they put in a lot of them. It's like, and then you hear with a lot of them. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah.
It's like the sound of like a GOG with like a steampunk machine or something, and it's so lazy. It's like, come on, like these DVD menus are so crazy creative. Like the Terminator 2 DVD, you'd like be in Skynet's base.
Yeah.
You could access the CPU, and they try to do that with a Blu-ray, but it's horribly slow on the Blu-ray. It's bad. But the Terminator 2 DVD was slammed with extra features. Just like there's like 10 hours of behind the scenes stuff, and not like the lazy galleries you'd have where you'd like press right on the menu and it's like, oh, here's a picture from behind the scenes. Like there was actually like fully produced like behind the scenes like tapes of how they made stuff. I remember they were talking to the sound designer on how they did the sound of when they blew up the T-1000, and it was just the Foley from it's real great because it's just a guy with a bunch of ice cubes, just shuffling it around and then dropping some nails in. And then when you watch the movie, I can't help but hear those ice cubes and those nails when Arnold shoots Robert Patrick and he shatters into a million pieces.
I don't think I knew that. That's great.
Yeah. But there was also those like there'd be like little hidden menus in DVDs too, where you could see bloopers from the film. The best one actually is from Boogie Nights, and there's this there's somewhere within the sub menu, if you hit a certain quarter, you could see Dirk Diggler playing around with this prosthetic penis for a period of time, and it's just like 1 minute of a prosthetic dick.
There seems to be a theme on this
Yes. I
podcast.
don't know if we're talking about the evolution of home video or porn, but
Well, again, it goes hand in hand or hand in gland.
there we go. Oh my gosh. Yes, but yes, there's I think there is a romanticism with home video. There is one Blockbuster still left in the country. I think, well, not anymore. It's going to be shut down now. But it was in Portland, Oregon, or Oregon, or whatever. Fuck it, I always said Oregon Trail. And then, it's still around. And they would have a lady. They have like this one lady who goes around. She picks up these movies, and people would go and rent from there. And it's the last surviving Blockbuster.
Now, I have to wonder about that. Is it a completely nostalgia-based economy with that store? Because I remember Blockbuster would be like, $2 or $3 for a night to rent the movie, and then you had to bring it back like right away. I mean, hell, Redbox, which, I mean, now they've even got like Redbox streaming, which seems kind of weird, but it'd be like $1.50 or 99 cents for 24 hours. I don't know how any brick and mortar store competes with that, let alone with the streaming, unless it's a Blockbuster literally out in the middle of nowhere. But it's not. It's in Portland.
Yeah. It is. I think it's nostalgia based, but they do get new releases there. So
sure, but it's got to be like one of those. When I say maybe not nostalgia, but sort of kitsch. Like I'm gonna go rent from Blockbuster, just to say that they rented from a Blockbuster in 2020.
Yeah. who's going to charge me for a late fee, right? Yeah.
Right. It's like it's kind of like in Pulp Fiction ordering a $5 milkshake. It's like
Yes.
it's like milk and ice cream. That's $5. Don't put bourbon in it or nothing. Oh,
Oh my God. I did watch a video online on how to make that particular milkshake, but the guy
Ooh.
added a lot of stuff to like make it better, and he added a little bit of booze to it, so that, it always helps out with the taste. Yeah, but so I was wondering, what kind of did you guys own any kind of memorabilia still from your VHS, DVD, Laserdisc days?
oh yeah.
Ah,
Hmm.
oh,
Well, I mean, I've
Share
got
with us.
if you've seen the YouTube videos that I put up, I usually it's kind of hard to tell
your
because of the
VHS
lighting and everything.
background. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my ode to dead technology, which I'm looking at right now.
Yeah.
But I've got a VCR, the first TV I owned, which was like a 9 or a 13-inch little color television I got in 1988. But I also have a VHS tape from, I think it was from my wife's parents. I don't remember how I got it, but yeah, I've got the second Blu-ray player. The first Blu-ray player I ever owned. So, kind of along these topics, I've become an unofficial like archivist of dead technology because I just think it looks cool.
Yeah.
And if you plug it in, it'll still work. And we sort of touched on this with the idea of having digital content, living in the cloud, as it were, or in your virtual library, which is pretty much the same thing. But like, what if the internet goes down, or there's some kind of like a corporate merger, or like, oh, Voodoo, you no longer have the rights to display these movies in people's queues, and they just disappear. I can still pull up a copy of One Crazy Summer off of my DVD shelf, or Idiocracy or something like that, and watch it from home. Unless they turn off the electricity, there's
I
nothing
think if
keeping me
the
from watching it.
internet goes down, unless electricity's next.
Sure, but I'm just talking. I'm
Go
just talking
ahead.
about like blackouts. Like in my
Oh,
neighborhood, there's an issue right now. By the time this goes up, it might hopefully be fixed, and it's not affecting me because I'm with RCN. But like all the AT&T customers, like in my entire neighborhood, have not had internet since yesterday morning.
oh my God.
Oh,
Yeah,
That
and
would be horrible.
yeah, especially my wife is
You got
messaging
AT&T.
with. Oh well, my wife's messaging with a lot of the other parents who have kids home homeschooling right now, and this like everyone's just going nuts because
God.
last resort is screen time, right?
Yeah, I know it's a good way. I mean, with my nephew, if you throw on Toy Story, he watched all 4 Toy Story movies twice in a row in one day, and it kept him completely quiet. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
man. Well, watching Toy Story 4 kept
It'll
me
be
completely quiet, except
it'll
for
be Generation Zombie.
pretty much.
Yeah, it is idiocracy. We are living in Idiocracy, the movie. Don't drink bleach. Okay.
Well,
Pat, do you have any memorabilia sitting around in your
I don't know. I'm very much into streamlining now, so
Yeah.
I've gotten rid of a lot of it.
Oh.
I to add to that thought, I just wanted to talk a little about, the stuff that we leave behind on this. How
Yeah.
much plastic and tape was used for the VHS era? How many, the DVDs now, I keep them too, Ian. I agree with you. I like to bring them out every so often. But again, it'll come a point where you have to get rid of it. So that goes in the landfill. So is streaming the end of the line for that? Who knows? The chip inside our head is coming. Don't you worry.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, with me,
Show me the Matrix.
yes,
And then you just sit there with the zombie-eyed expression as you watch the Matrix
it's so
in your brain.
Isn't it funny watching the Matrix today? Like they're using those old, like 90s computers with those rough keyboards, and that's supposed to be like breaking technology, and it's like, you know, I wonder I guess
It's always funny to see old cell phones in movies. I like that.
yeah, it's supposed to be like the future, yet they don't have iPhones, and they're like using like old phones. It's like, okay, that makes sense. I mean, of course, as I mentioned before, my dad had his video store, so I have a lot of the stuff from his store in my place. We still have, I don't know what the name of those like silver divider like metal things are that stores would have, but he's got like one of those for some obligatory reason in his basement, and he's got a bunch of VHS tapes there. But then when I see my folks, they have like 160 DVDs, that I got all the way from like 2000. They're still sitting around, and I also have in my apartment about like 20 DVDs that I bought from there. And it's I guess moving on to my second question. And I do have some.
Are we just done with the first one? Is this a 24-hour podcast?
Yes. You guys are in it for the long haul. I need someone to talk to during this quarantine. But I think we kind of hinted at what our answers are. Do you guys prefer streaming or physical media? Because everything is kind of in the cloud, but I kind of miss holding a movie in my hands these days. Don't let my answer persuade you in any way.
I'm sorry, it's too convenient to stream. I just like, basically we're just going upstream through the technologies, no pun intended, and I just, the convenience of it is too great.
Yeah.
As opposed to getting something off the shelf, taking it out, putting it in the tray. Okay, it's sort of almost like using a turntable versus, whatever CDs. How about you, Ian?
I'm kind of two minds about it. I'm a collector. I've just got that mentality. I've got, a basement full of comic books. I've got, shelves full of Blu-rays, and my DVD shelf is getting smaller and smaller as I trade them up for Blu-rays over the years. But I do like being able to walk into my living room and see, in the big glass bookshelf cases, my library of movies. It's just a thing that I like. I mean, because even with the Vudu account, I've got, a couple hundred movies in there probably, but it's just not the same scrolling through a screen versus going and looking at some really nice spines.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it feels like the streaming service or the people who run it are really late to the game on this one, because they finally, in the last couple of years, have started putting out special features. Like when you rent or buy a movie, they'll say, "Oh, you can also watch this featurette." I was saying, years and years ago, if they're really going to make this attractive to people who are really into the movies, there is a convenience to streaming, but one of the reasons people still like buying physical media is because of all those special features. So if you could like buy the movie for $12 or whatever, but then for 99 cents, you can also buy the audio commentary track as, an MP3 or something. So you can enjoy it that way. That's a great way to kill physical media. I mean, there's always going to be the dinosaurs like me who like to touch and feel things as they put them on their television. But I also, lately have really kind of fallen in love with the convenience of streaming, with being at home and still running a podcast that does like 2 or 3 shows a week. I don't have access to go out to Target and like buy a DVD or, whatever for a movie that I'm going to talk about this week. I'll go on Amazon, plunk down $3 or $4, and then I'm watching it instantly. And I can, watch it for 48 hours and talk about it and then kind of be done with it. Then if I like it enough, then I can say, well, I'll add that to my Amazon wish list. And, someday I'll buy the DVD or the Blu-ray. So it's a great kind of preview mechanism in addition to being convenient. Because whereas I would have, before, like a few years ago, just gone out and like, oh, I'll just go to Best Buy and spend 10 or 12 bucks to buy this movie. Now I can spend a quarter of that, and if I hate it, then I don't have to think about it anymore. I save myself some some time, trouble, and expense. So yeah, I kind of love both of them. I just wish that the digital aspect had more to offer than the physical media aspect of it does. But as there's less and less investment in special features on big movies, as we saw in the DVD boom, like we were talking about with the interactive menus plus the hours and hours of extras, I mean, you're not seeing that even on like quote unquote bigger releases nowadays. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, well, the whole incentive for that was that you're going to go out and spend X amount on a DVD. You better give them something extra if they're going to spend that money. Well, now with streaming, it's like, well, nobody's going to spend extra. Therefore, we don't need to do all that ephemeral stuff. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. That will probably die eventually. Or, they'll start packaging them to attract people anew. So maybe it'll come back in that form.
And they'll make you pay a lot for them too. I remember in the good old days, you'd get a DVD and for like $20, and you could get like 10 hours of features, like an old used DVD. And I'm of a tale of two minds with it. In an ideal world, I would love for there to be an option to stream, but also to go to your local video store and buy it and look at a movie, because it was a social. I mean, maybe I'm going down nostalgia and memory lane because everything before the shutdown was good, and now we're living in a perpetual state of hell. But I just think when we had it was a social experience to go to a video store with your friends and walk through the aisles, and you would just rent a movie sometimes just based on its artwork alone on the cover, or if the movie you didn't know you wanted to have was there, you'd get something else. I remember when I was a kid, I loved Godzilla movies because something else wasn't available, and I just bought these random things, and I got the toys with them, and that was a cool experience. It was something to share with your friends. You could go to the concession, when you bought your film, buy like a lucratively sized thing of like, gummy bears or whatever, and that was great. And the thing I love about physical media that I still have is, I mean, I might be old, but I feel like I always like grabbing the DVD, putting it in the tray, closing the player, and then holding the copy of this movie and knowing I've had this for 10 years. It still works great. It's not going anywhere. Maybe long after I'm dead, I'll either give it off to, maybe like my kids or have them, or like my niece or nephew or something. But it's something that I always have, and it's nice to have a good collection of that stuff and say this is mine. But there is the absolute. There is the absolute joy with streaming that everything is instantly available. I mean, I could try to find a movie from the Criterion Collection on, Netflix DVD, but I have to wait a week for it to come in and then hope they have a copy and da. Or I could just go on the Criterion channel and bam, if I want to watch a Tarkovsky film, it's right there.
Yeah.
And I can watch it wherever I want to at any time I want. And it's a beautiful quality. And
what about One Crazy Summer?
And you can watch One Crazy Summer.
Tarkovsky, gee, listen to you. Jesus, no wonder nobody listens to these anymore.
Or you could go and watch, you could maybe find whatever pornos. All right, I'm at. But yeah, you could watch anything. You want. You can go on Netflix and and see like Goodfellas on there instead of having to scour around to find a copy for it if you don't have one. Which if you don't, what the hell are you doing? But you could yeah, but yes, there is this instantaneous sort of gratification to it. The quality is fantastic. Still, yeah, but I guess ultimately, if I had to choose, I'd always choose physical media because it lasts longer and it doesn't get lost in the cloud because you don't know what gets taken on and off a catalog or where that money of yours goes like 10 years down the line. Although I still have a digital copy of Hulk on my PS3 that I rented. I don't know if I can play it on my PS4. So once my PS3 dies, and yes, I like that note that what happens when your internet goes down. That was a point I made to my friend Nolan, who said, "Well, you can have my BritBox info and watch the Fools and Horses." And I said, "Well, if I have the DVD, if the internet goes down, I can just put on the DVD." You know.
And if you need that for fuel when everything goes down, you can burn them. They burn slow.
No, well, I guess the zombie apocalypse, yes, which we're living in right now. So yeah.
All right. On that note, I hope you enjoyed our discussion of home video and the apocalypse.
Yes, I always like to end on a note of optimism.
All right, gentlemen.
Yes. So, anyways, guys, on that note, thank you for coming on. Please check out Ian Simmons at kickseat.com and Pat McDonald at hollywoodchicago.com. Maybe I'll interview my dad about his video store as he
do that
on about like customers he wanted to strangle or something like that. But no, it was actually something he's very proud of. But yes,
the strangulation of the store.
Yes, the strangulation of the video business. You know, the video store is gone. But no, this is a good trip down memory lane. I'm still trying to find a time machine. It's not available yet. But thank you guys for coming on. This is You'll Probably Agree, and we'll see you later.